Hello, my friends. Big Mark here, back with you, the secrets behind the red doors. As you can see, I got my dear friend, Mr. Kevin Coleman. How you doing, my pal? How you doing? What's going on? Welcome back. Uh, I'm glad you like the last videos. More to come. A lot of stories we're going to tell you. I got to tell you guys, there's two things I want to talk about. First of all, when I talk about John and the Bergen, these are stories from the 80s. I talk about respect. I'm not here. We're here to just tell you sides that none of them liars and creeps talk about. They don't know. They didn't know them guys. John, Angelo, Gene, Pete, everybody that hung around there had a personality. I'm going to explain that personality and show you them stories. Also, I'm going to update you on that special. We're putting it together. I'm telling you this now, my friends. This special is going to be something you've never seen before, and you're all going to be included. You're going to be part of it. I'm going to do something here. We're going to reveal something here and talk about something here that I promise you that it's going to be something special, never before seen. And I want my viewers and subscribers to be part of it. And so I'll keep you up to date. We're working on it. I don't want to jump the gun, but I promise you, just let you know, it's something going to really have an impact. So on that story, I want to tell you a story back then in the 80s. Now, growing up in Ozone Park, if you're from Ozone Park, you know it was a pretty tight neighborhood. It had a lot of crooks and crevices, you know what I mean? But it was a really, really stone cold neighborhood. People really actually looked out for each other a lot, really. And a lot of the people from Ozone Park, especially Italians, they moved from East New York and Brownsville. They just emigrated up. So there was a restaurant in Ozone Park. And never forget, it, been there for years. And it was called Quatuchio's. Now, Quatuchio's was on First Avenue between 101st Street and 2nd Street. It was next door to Cassisi's Funeral Home. It was a door up the stairs with a gate. You walked in. It was up the stairs. Now, John Quatuchio was the owner. They were good cooks. We used to go a lot of summer, spring nights. Johnny'd be at a club, nothing to do, we'd be back. It'd be 6 o'clock. He'd grab me, Pete, Jerry, Billy, anybody was there. Come on, guys, let's go down to Quatuchio, take a walk. We'll go to eat. And we go, people would eat. John was famous, great pasta dishes, great pasta fagioli, was out of this world. And it was him, his sons. But John was famous because he made pizza. He only made pizza a couple days a week. And the pizza was exquisite. It really was. But so story about Quatuchio's. Kevin, you know Quatuchio's.
Yeah,
You know
it was
from a
good.
long time ago.
Great. Yep.
The food was good, right?
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
I'm going to tell you a story about John Quatuchio. Then I want Kevin to tell you another story about a guy that Johnny liked, that Johnny had affection for. But so one day it was a continental game. I'll tell you who the players were. It was John, Angelo, Joe Messina, and I think it was Zeke was playing. I think Arnold Squartieri. I think it might have been him or Joe Butch, but it might have been Arnold Squartieri. I think it was him because Arnold, you remember, he had a great personality, always laughing. So, and they're playing a long time game. It's a continental game, big money, 5,000 a man up at that time, whatever. And I'm keeping score of the game. Pete's sitting down, and the clock is ticking. I mean, it's 5 o'clock. The sun's coming up. 6 o'clock. It's daytime. All of a sudden, Joe Messina turns to John and says, I'm starving. He says, we got food back there. No, I'm looking for something nice, hot. Something hearty, he says. So Johnny says to me, what time is it? And he says, Pete says, it's 7:30 a.m. It's call Quatuchio's. I know he gets in there. Call John Quatuchio. See if he's in the restaurant. Pete says, yeah, go there. So I said, I think Jackie or somebody ran down to Quatuchio's, only a couple blocks away. Johnny wants to see you. Okay, Quatuchio comes. Big Italian guy, gray hair, bald head, stocky guy. And he's got his apron on, with the food stains on. He was
Ready to go
prepping,
to
right?
work.
Remember, he always had the apron always had the food stains, Kevin,
That's
right? So, John, what's the matter? He said, listen, we're hungry. What can you do for us? I could bring you whatever you want. No, there's something you could make here for us fresh. So what do you want? So John said, Johnny, tell me what you want. I'm in the mood for a nice bowl of that pasta fagioli. That time was a slang, pasta fagioli, they used to say. So Joe says, yeah, Paul for the angel. John says, you got the pots? I got the stuff. John comes in, he's cooking this giant pot. That had to be enough to feed 30 people of pasta fagioli or pasta fagioli. Comes out, they get the fresh bread. He brings fresh bread from the restaurant. They're sitting there, they pick a break in the game, and everybody's eating these. And I'm not talking about little bowls. Between John, Joe Messina, Angelo, and Zeke, the bowls was like salad bowls. They were shoveling this in at 7:30 in the morning. But the guys are hungry, and it was really good. Dipping the bread in. They had something to drink. Don't whine, because they're gambling. Came by, John says, "Jake, hey, do something." He said, "No, I don't want done for you, nothing here." Johnny says, "Here." He took 500, gave it to him. "Thank you, John. Just whatever. Ring it up in the register." "Oh, I appreciate it, John." He didn't fight too hard. He took the 500.
He took the 500.
Took the 500 and left. Right, Kevin? So an hour goes by. An hour and a half goes by. I'm keeping score. The game continues. They go to 10,000. All of a sudden, I don't know if you guys ever seen Blazing Saddles. When the guys were around the campfire eating the beans, well, that's what we got at the Conto game. I have four men of honor and respect laying waste to the air. The farts were ringing from the food, Kevin, and it became almost a competition while they're playing cards for 10,000 a hand. I'm telling you, this is funny, but it's real. And they fought for about a half hour. Pete and Jackie coming out there with the spray. This is hilarious. And they didn't miss a beat. They're still playing cards. That's the scene of this. This is what the Bergen was. This is one of the stories. I want you to hear the story because it's classic. Now, there was another guy.
Hold on. Little Funzy had the recipe to them. Everything that they made in Quatuchio's, right? He had the recipe. Unfortunately, when we buried him, we couldn't find the.
Oh yeah.
We couldn't find it. We wish we had that today because the food was excellent.
So get back to the story that so there's a guy, a real man, came around the club. I knew him when he came in the club. Johnny treated him with respect. Johnny liked the guy. Kevin's going to tell you about this guy, and his name is Tommy LaRufa. Kevin was close to him. Tell me a story about Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy was a great man. He used to come by the club, very classy. He used to even see a woman in the street. He had a fedora and would tip his hat and open the door for a woman, and he was just a dress sharp. Matter of fact, I didn't tell you, but that's how I met O'Neill.
Yeah.
He was very close to O'Neill. The guy did 25 years in the can, okay? Never gave up nothing, He was a great, great cook. His marinara sauce, he turned around, he still had the jailhouse mentality where cutting the garlic, he was just good. One day, turned around, they had a bazaar on Atlantic Avenue. And I believe it was like 103rd, 104th Street. There was an empty lot there. We thought Tommy was at the bazaar.
It was the old Borders factory. Remember the Borders factory?
Yes. So anyway, John calls. He says, "Is Tommy with you?" I says, "No." Now we're looking for Tommy. Okay. Before Tommy moved out of East New York, he was always running around with a knife in the coat that he had. And I said to him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Ain't nobody going to mug me." So I said, "Okay, we're going to get you out of there."
How old was he about by then? About 70s? Was it 70s?
Well,
late 60s?
Matter of fact, this month, May 1st, 1982, he died.
Oh, so how old was he before he...
Well, he had to have been in his 70s then.
Yeah, he was a very classy looking guy, I'm telling you.
Guy was really sharp.
And he could talk he could talk $20 out of your pocket
and
real good.
Gambling? He couldn't gamble for nothing.
So tell the story about the...
So anyway, we get him out of East New York. We get him into Ozone Park on 101 Street and 97th Avenue. A friend of ours had the building. Turns around. A Port Authority cop fell asleep with a cigarette. And Tommy was on the second floor. He died in the fire. I tried to get him out of that fire. Mike Gambada, Joey's aunt, called me. Said, Kevin, the house is on fire. What I was sad about is when they took him out. Here was a sharp guy. Had nothing and stuff, but what a way to go.
Yeah, honorable guy. 25 years dies in a fire. It's sad because here's a guy we was talking about. He did he had a lot of conversation with Tommy.
Oh,
When I met him by the club, you see him. He had that little hop, skip in his walk. He had a fedora, a suit, an overcoat. Hey, Marco, how you doing? And Johnny would see him and go see John. Hey, Tommy, how you? Johnny admired guys like this. Gave you 25 years for whatever he did. I don't care what he did, but wasn't a violent guy.
he couldn't drive for nothing. I needed a ride one day to upstate.
Yeah.
And turn around. He was working for a car service on Fulton and Crescent. And I said, Tommy, you got to take me. What? I said, you got to take me upstate. I got to go back. So he turns around and says, and I had him in the car. Oh my God, the way he drove. And I said, but he was a great guy. Never turned you down for nothing.
Yeah, and see what he says? Johnny knows who to talk to. I mean, he staked them. Every time he come by the club, see Johnny give him a few $100, put in your pocket. That guy, 25 years in jail. He says,
great man.
He says, I respect the guy. That's John. Nobody special, just a guy. But listen, he was friends with Neil Delacroche.
Yes.
But still, these are the things, some of the things, that's why I want, Kevin said, I got to talk about Tommy LaRuffa. I said, of course. You got to like the guy, and he died a bad way, it's a shame. But see, it's guys like this that come around the Bergen. I don't care. Listen, I can't compare other clubs, but I've seen guys, he'll tell you, in the summertime, on a Saturday, maybe 50 guys. And it'd probably be 3 or 4 different crews there from different places coming to hang out with John. And we'd be there hanging out, go to track, eating. Listen, one time John says remember Ozone Pizza, right? The old man, he died, he ran that place from his father for years. You better call Ozone. I want 20 Sicilians. 20 Sicilians. It's 11:30 in the morning. I go there. I says, Mario, Johnny wants 20 Sicilians. All right, you got to give me about 45 minutes. He says, I got to prepare everything. He says, 20 Sicilians. He says, we'll deliver them. He says, don't worry, we'll bring them. Don't be late. We don't want cold pizza. I says, how much are 20 pizza? He gave him money. Back then it was maybe $10 a pie, whatever. $8. Gave him the pie. So he'd come to the club and see John. He'd walk into the club, the pizza guy with a helper, carrying these pies, Kevin, and it was a sea of street guys in there. A sea of street. So imagine he was walking like this. He put his head down. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Guy. He's like, oh, no, Mario. You make it sound like it's the first time I order from him. No, thank you for the business. Everybody says, I tell Johnny, Mr. John comes here and eats my pizza. He says, Johnny says, you paid you? Yeah. He says, yeah, kid. He pulled out a $100 bill for you and no, I own the place. Give it to the helper, he says. This is an impression. John, Gene, Pete, everybody around there, especially them guys, mainstays there, the neighborhood, you had to respect the people in the neighborhood, even though there were some guys, right, Kevin, took advantage of the neighborhood.
Yep.
They shook down people. They ain't shake down nobody. I don't know what they show you on TV. They're not shaking down people. They ain't shaking down nobody. They everything, there's an old saying, you don't shit where you eat, right?
That's it. Don't do it.
So he knows we go back a long way. I mean, in that club, there's a story that, you were around Tony Gork. Tony Gork ever talk about John? How about Chicky Lito?
Chicky too.
Good man, Chicky.
He was the best.
Aces, man. Chicky was good.
Turned around, I had a lot of fun with Chicky. But yes, to your question, Tony Gork used to always talk about John. Used to talk about Angelo.
Yeah.
He loved those guys because they were in the same category.
And they were old school.
Okay, and they were old school.
I heard Chicky had the liquor store. And I said, listen, Chicky loved John. Now, this is a guy that, hung out with different guys, but he loved John, and you could see it when he talked about him, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
We used to, you around him a lot, and he, no matter what, he respected, they were at my, they came to my wedding, but you run around. Chicky said to John, listen, John's a good man. John's a good man. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. He's ashamed there's not many guys like that. And listen,
Chicky was a real man. He was a real man.
He was a tough guy. But he had a liquor store, right? He had a liquor store on Linden Boulevard. And across the street from the projects.
Cypress Project.
Oh, yeah.
Cypress.
So And he had a liquor store. And back then, it was one of the first liquor stores I seen that had the fiberglass box. You know, you used to give the liquor in there, close the door, and the guy used to go and grab the liquor, protection, bulletproof glass, plastic, plexiglass, remember? One day, I'm standing outside, I'm talking to his sons, outside, summertime, and I hear, ping, come off the building, maybe 5 feet over our heads. We duck. What the hell's that? Somebody's firing shots at us from the projects. What the hell is this? I never seen something like that. The light changes. We walk across Lennon Boulevard. His sons and me in the lobby was all the gangbangers that hung out in that lobby. What's the matter, guys? Somebody's firing shots from the window. You guys go back there. We'll grab him. We'll take care of him. We go upstairs. They grab some little kid with a .22 rifle. He's just shooting at things out of his 10-story window. They're dragging him down there. They're smacking him. Who told you to play with guns? These are gangbangers telling the kid. But that's... Then Chicky goes, who's firing shots? Says, this is a neighborhood, but Chicky says, you think that's new around here? That wasn't new.
Well, I remember the time where I was sitting in the back with him, and he told this guy from the neighborhood there, don't be bringing me pennies. The guy brought him a sack of pennies. And Chicky's thing, he used to want to bite his finger, right? He went out there, he said, didn't I tell you not to bring me pennies? He said, but Chick, I need my liquor.
But these are some of the guys that, like, you know, like the Gawk, respected guy. You heard that story before. And Chicky, who Kevin was around a lot, who liked John. So I'm not just telling stories from my personal view. You know, that's why Kevin's here. Besides, you know, I kind of like the guy a little bit after knowing him for 40 years. You know what I mean? But no, I'm serious. You know, I love the guy. He's a really good guy. But these stories, them idiots, and I told you, I mentioned no name. Like I tell them, like people who watch us, you're asking me questions on comments. And first of all, I'm dealing with my wife. You got your own issues to deal with. You know, some of the stories, if they're, we could try to answer them. If not, we'll try to answer them here. That's where we want to answer everything. You don't have to ask us the questions yet. I promise you, you'll get that chance. But right now, I want you to respect this way of honoring men. Not the life. I tell you, I'll repeat it again. We're not honoring the life. Honoring men that everybody should.
Well, remember, we're going back 40 years ago.
Yeah, this is the 80s. Most of these guys, God rest their soul, they're dead. You know, most of them. I would say 90% of them are.
Yes.
And some died in prison, which is another shame. But there's others out there alive. I hope they enjoy the rest of their lives with their families and live a peaceful life. I respect them and they're good men. So I just want to say, these stories will center around all this back then. I mean, this is a true story I wanted to, and I have to mention it. I was thinking about it the other day, and it came up in the summertime or springtime. A lot of times, Gene, Joey, and them used to go by Russo's to eat dinner on Friday night or Tuesday night, whatever night it was. In the summertime, they come back to the club, and sometimes a bunch of guys come out, let's go for a walk. They start walking to Cross Bay Boulevard, walk up into Howard Beach over the first bridge. I mean, this is like 3 or 4 miles. And the guys would walk, 5, 6, 7 guys, street guys, and not wearing sweatproof. Some guys had slacks and shoes on and just talking about baseball, talking about this, remember that rest. And you turn around and all of a sudden you're walking back. And the walk, and back then, people be driving, they see us walking. It was not a big deal because we were just having a conversation. We went for these walks. You know, Jeannie would say, it was good exercise. You could go for these walks. We just ate dinner. But these were natural events there. We'd pass by the different clubs. You say hello, walk by. You know, it was really unpretentious. These were really guys who grew up poor. Not just them, a lot of them, most of them did. And so, and they appreciate the little things. You know, I tell a story. Me and him one day in Brooklyn, right? So, you go to eat places in Brooklyn back then, in diners, you run into 10, 15 guys, They come from all different directions. It was swamped. Everybody. And remember, don't let the media or the rats prove it. It wasn't about committing crimes. It was just guys doing their own thing. How many guys did these work for a living? A lot of guys worked.
Yeah, a lot of
guys worked in construction. A lot of guys had their own business. But when it comes back to the Bergen, a lot of these people who didn't go visit John and Gene, all about it, wish they did. They would love to be part of that. This was a classic operation that was, you know, from Little John to Charlie Deke. Listen, I tell you, there was, I talked about Tony Roach last night, the classic guy Tony Roach, but there was guys that came around there. I mean, I don't know if you never. There was one guy I'm gonna talk about. I miss him, Bobby Borriello.
I didn't know Bobby.
Bobby Borriello was originally from President Street in Brooklyn. Bobby Borriello originated from like the Joe Gallo crew.
By Peanuts and all.
Yeah, by Joe Gallo. He was a real, he got put with John and Bobby. Every time you seen Bobby, Kevin, he was always laughing. He had a joke to tell. He always made you smile. He just had this infectious personality. But he was a real street hood. And Bobby was around John, and Bobby loved to gamble at every turn. I don't know. It's amazing how guys around John, even if they never hung around him before, they all had gambling connections, right? Everybody had gambling connections. It was almost like they had nothing to talk about for gambling. But that was that era. Listen, these guys went out to restaurants, went out for drinks. They didn't go out picking up every girl they see. The gambling was there. A lot of gambling with your buddies was playing cards was there. I'm not saying there were a lot of them were angels, but most of it was just hanging out with your buddies. I mean, if you go back to old law or history in Italy, the men who worked hard during the day would have dinner. They would go to the coffee shop and hang out with their buddies and talk and yap and drink coffee. And it became almost down the line where these guys grew up. I mean, I miss that. You're like, when I was living in Queens, there was a cafe, a coffee shop every half a mile. And you didn't have to even belong to it. Just walking up a coffee, just that sense of your own culture hanging around. Even if there was 19 working guys, it didn't matter, right, Kev? I mean, how many cafes you go to in your life when you're living in right?
So many.
Living in Brooklyn, Long Island, Queens. It wasn't to go see
Brooklyn, 13th Avenue. You had a
lot
cafe on almost every corner.
Yeah, and you didn't go there for quote unquote illegal things. You went there just to hang out with guys that you identified with, character-wise or verbally. Some places you went in with strangers, you didn't go in there. But the Bergen just, he'll tell you, listen, my friend been there. We're gonna have other guys hopefully that been there. We're here to pay homage to a time that was different.
Time.
I'm going from like maybe 1980 to early 90s, 92, 94. That's it. I mean, I left. He did his own thing. We saw, the life. Our friends were gone, and but I want you to respect what I'm talking about. I'm not going to tell you any lies. They're all truth. He's not going to lie to you. I don't think we can lie. If we can, I think if we lie about stories, we'll probably fall down and hurt ourselves. But
like back to Tony Gork and Tommy LaRufa, that was a bad year for me because I lost both of them.
Exactly.
Both of them.
Here, see, now this is 2025. You lost two guys.
43 years ago.
Yeah, lost two friends that still have an impact on your life, right? Sure, it's like me. When I can talk about John had impact on something, but even like Angelo. I liked Angelo. Angelo was a good man. Like I says, without Angelo, John, to me, my opinion, doesn't accomplish as much as most guys. But Angelo was partners with him. They were like partners. But when Angelo died, he died young. He was 48 years old, 47 or 48. When they asked me, when they came to me, pieces, you were requested to be his pallbearer. I found that as an honor. Of course I'll carry his casket. I respected him. As funny as out of sorts he can be, he was still a tough guy. These were tough guys, and it was an honor to be his pallbearer. And that's if I thought big enough to make me a pallbearer, there was 8 of us, 8 guys. I was one of them, so I felt honored because I respected him. What about listen?
I still remember like it was yesterday with Tommy. We laid him out in Steffens. Johnny came right away.
Of course, yeah.
Right away. Angelo, everybody. Turn around. I still go when I'm up in New York. I go to Calverton Cemetery, section number 6. That's where Tommy is. And turn around, I don't forget my friend.
But see, that's why He's my friend for 40 years. Why we're here. That's why I want him to come onto the show and talk too, and hopefully in other shows, right? Different shows, but because he's honest, fearless, but honest, got an honest heart. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, there's guys that you're watching, they have not a fucking shred of honesty or character. We're not going to sit here and we promise ourselves no names. You know why? They don't deserve to be mentioned in the same realm as these good men. See, we said Johnny and Angel ran to the wake. You know why? They respected Tommy not for how much money in his pocket or not what
He
he
had
could
about
do.
2 cents in his pocket.
Yeah, he had 2 cents. No, he had 2 cents in his pocket, and if you had 2 cents, he'd try to take your 2 cents. But they respect him because of the man he was, and that's the difference. That's what we structure the show on. So I got one thing about the club. When you walked in. When Johnny put his office next door, right in the back, they had a makeshift barber sink with a mirror. I'm describing it. So Johnny had barbers coming and doing his hair. Johnny was, a fanatic about how he looked. There's a lot of guys like that. There was a guy called, good-looking Jack, handsome Jack. Johnny called him Jackie the actor because he thought he was he played the part like an actor, you know what I mean? But I think there was personal competitions on how they dressed, you know what I mean? Jackie, him,
Tony Gork too.
yeah, they all had this flash about them, and I'm not saying the other guys like Angel, Gene, and Pete didn't know how to dress, but they just went over the edge on how they dressed. Listen, this is a guy who grew up with holes in his shoes. They grew up with holes in his shoes. Now they got a chance to look sharp. Listen, and think about it. Who influenced their dressing features? Think about that story. Now, I want you guys to subscribe. Tell your friends. The show's going to get better, more detailed. I got a lot of stories. I'm trying to just lay them out. We're going to do it nice and slow for you. You want the truth, you come here, listen to me and Kevin, and hopefully another friend of ours. So come here. I'm going to tell you the truth. Nothing bad. I'm going to tell you why we respect these men for how they led their life, not what they did with their lives. You need to, they deserve to be told. This story deserves to be told. I wrote this story a long time ago. I've been working on it for years. It means a lot to me. And I need your help here. Subscribe. Let's get this. And we'll air out more adventures, more shows. I promise you, he's going to be part of it. Me and Kevin will be back next episode. So I want you to tell you guys, sit tight. Be faithful. Johnny had faithful guys around him. In the Bergen, they were all faithful, not the other guys you see in different areas all over the place. Be faithful in honor and respect. That's it. You guys have a great day.
And happy Mother's Day to the mothers out there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we can't forget the mothers. Listen, we're going to have a mother story in the next episode. I promise you. He just reminded me. See, that's why Kevin's my friend, too. Sometimes you got to stick a nail in me so I remember some things. But I got a Mother's Day story. Mother's story I want to tell you. I think you should know about it. But you guys have a great day. God bless. See you soon.